last time you really had to wait for something? Put in the time, do the work, and then see the result. Now think about the kids that you know. Maybe it's your own kids. Maybe it's your students. Maybe it's neighbors, family, friends. How many of them have ever had to really wait for something? Seriously. Just to put this into perspective, most of the students entering college today were born in 1998, and they have never known a world where they had to wait until a sibling was done on a phone call to call the person they wanted to, or to connect to the internet. It has all been at their fingertips nearly their whole life. They've also never experienced the pain of missing their favorite TV series because they had a family commitment or to do chores. Now, they can do that anywhere, anytime. The all too real pain of making your own mixtape is completely lost on this generation. I mean, how many of you have ever actually made your own mixtape, a real one? So just for those of the younger generation that are in the audience, making a mixtape is not just putting a bunch of different songs from a bunch of different artists on a playlist. Making a real mixtape is waiting patiently by the radio, hoping that the DJ is going to play your favorite song, having one finger on play and one finger on record, and making sure you press them at the exact right time, right after the DJ announces and right before the song starts, so you get the entire song and no one knows you copied it, right? Yeah, the pain was all too real of making mixtapes. So back to the waiting game, also known to me as patience and perseverance, and why they matter. How can we ever expect our Gen Z learners and their snack media habits to really develop the capacity for tenacity? Simply put, have them study the arts. So music is the specific art that I have seen time and time again help students develop patience, perseverance, confidence, self-expression, and much, much more. And I'm certainly not the only one who sees this pattern. In a study performed by the NAM Foundation and the Grunwald Associates, they found that both teachers and parents feel particularly strongly about music's social-emotional benefits. 4 of the top 5 benefits they reported were in that category. As you can see, 92% of those participants felt that self-expression was something music education could elicit in children. 90% said confidence. 89% said practice habits, and 88% said self-discipline. And those attributes are not things that are only affecting those children within the music classroom, they're affecting their entire life. So while yes, we may see those practice habits develop in music, they're also going to affect the way that that student acts in math and the way that they approach a new difficult problem, or the way that they approach their group work in a social studies classroom. So how is it that studying music can elicit such incredible attributes? Well, there are multiple factors, including the fact that students studying music must build a capacity for tenacity. The path of studying music consists of a series of failures, with just enough tiny successes along the way to keep students engaged and striving for their next success. So think about a budding clarinet player, and I want to apologize to any parents out there that had clarinet players, and sorry, Mom. We all know the pain of listening to the squeaking at the beginning, but seriously, any time that a kid is trying to put together an instrument for the first time, they are bound to get failures 1 through 10 right away, especially when you're dealing with an instrument where you're expected to fasten a piece of cane to it to produce a beautiful sound. It just seems a little ridiculous. So here's where the development of those incredible attributes I spoke about before begins. While the instructor is present to help guide students, ease the blow of continual failures, and ensure enough tiny successes along the way so that students continue striving for that next success, music educators do not remove the difficulties for the student. They rather allow them to struggle through those difficulties. And I know what some of you are thinking, what? Why would they just let their students struggle? Well, it's because we know the process is far more important than the product at that moment. And that in order for these students to continue to study music, they have to develop a capacity for tenacity. As music educators, we ourselves have struggled, and many of us continue to be in a place where we struggle as we study our craft more intently or we take the challenge of a new, difficult piece of literature. The beauty in this is that we understand that in order to develop student perseverance and patience, or the capacity for tenacity, we must do 4 things. First, we must give our students a purpose for learning. Second, we must give specific, timely feedback. Third, we must provide information and guidance and then allow students to struggle. And fourth, we must ensure that students break through that struggle with enough small successes to keep them engaged. So the challenge for educators is that we're attempting to build this capacity for tenacity within a culture that continually breeds the exact opposite within our youth. Take the 4 things I mentioned that are pertinent to developing a student's capacity for tenacity, for example. First, teaching today's youth requires a bit more attention to why they need to learn something. I distinctly remember sitting in my 7th grade social studies class and a friend of mine asking the teacher, "Why do we need to learn these capitals? When am I have to use this anyway?" And the teacher responding with, "Because you do." No further discussion. If I would have given an answer like that to my middle school students, I'm quite positive that they would have justified their question with a response something like, "That's what Google is for." And they are correct. So, in our world of the pocketbook of anything and everything on your device, it stands to reason that students need a purpose for what they are learning. Gone are the days when students need to memorize facts. They need to be taught the process of learning and why it's important for them. Second, youth in our society continually receive feedback. And while it's typically quite timely, it is not specific with regard to improvement. While we've all seen the likes or dislikes comments that appear on social media channels, I would hardly classify those as specific feedback designed for improvement. So third, many of our students have been catered to in the form of someone else handling anything difficult that comes along in their lives. Prime example, I was speaking about video games with one of my students, and we were talking about the difficulty level of a Super Mario's Brother game. And as we were going through the conversation, I am hoping to hear that my student had played the game and figured out little tricks on his own and just kept at it, that capacity for tenacity kept going. And when I asked the question, "So how'd you finally beat it?" Cheat codes? I was a completely defeated teacher. But I think if that industry were to tweak just tiny things within their games, we'd have students that were actually building a capacity for tenacity and wouldn't bail to cheat codes quite so quickly. Fourth, the snack media appetite of Gen Zers primes them to expect success in short order. The trick to utilizing this for good when building the capacity for tenacity is to ensure that students are able to experience some small success. Building on those small successes is key to engaging students in the process and not having them focus too much on the product. That learning process is something that happens every day in music classrooms around the country. Think about a band or a chorus or an orchestra classroom. Those teachers every day, they are masters at these 4 steps. They always have a purpose for what their students are learning. Sometimes is there one purpose, the performance? Yes, but they always have a purpose, and the students know that. They are complete masters at feedback, because what happens in a rehearsal? The band is playing, the conductor hears something awry, they stop them, give very specific, timely feedback, and the band can improve. So that learning process that they go through in a music classroom is a foundation that will serve those students a lifetime through in any education or job setting. So I want to tell you about Mark. Mark was a student of mine who entered my music classroom absolutely convinced that there was no reason for him to learn the information that I had to share with him, and that it was his responsibility to let me know that multiple times a class period. So we had quite the special relationship, Mark and I. I would always greet my students at the door in the morning and say, "Oh, good morning, I'm so glad you're here," to which Mark would reply, "I'm not." Awesome. But while those comments may have discouraged some, to me, they only made me want to help Mark even more. And they wanted me to develop in him that capacity for tenacity and to understand that no matter if this is something that you feel you need to learn, there is benefit from it. So when it came to learning notes on the staff and how they related to the keyboard in our classroom, Mark did everything except stand up, shout, scream, and kick that he was not going to learn this. So at the end of the class period, I decided I needed to pull Mark aside and figure out what was going on. So I kept him and I said, "Hey, Mark." He said, "Yeah, so I noticed you didn't really do anything today. What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I don't need to learn that stuff. There's no reason I need to learn that." I said, "Oh." And my teacher light bulb went off and I went, "Yeah, this kid has no purpose for what he's doing right now. So connect the dots for him." So I said, "Mark, do you listen to YouTube at home?" And he replies, "Yeah, I love YouTube. Listen to songs." I'm like, "Awesome. Did you remember the first day of music class when I let you know that we were going to learn all these skills and eventually you were going to post your composition on YouTube?" What? Of course he didn't remember. So I said, "Yeah, Mark, so here's the thing. You are learning all of this so that you can write your composition and it's going to go on YouTube." And he says, "So tomorrow I get to put it on YouTube?" And I said, "Mark, have you written your composition yet?" "No." I said, "Okay, so tomorrow you're not going to put it on YouTube, but you know what you are going to do tomorrow? Tomorrow you're going to come to class and you're going to learn the skills to be able to write that composition, to be able to mix and master it, to be able to publish it on YouTube. Does that sound good?" Oh, okay. Well, to me, okay was a win. So the next class period, Mark comes in and I greet him at the door and I say, "Good morning, I'm so happy to see you." And he says, "Hi." Another win! So we go through class that day and Mark has some frustrations and he's having some struggles. So I followed my procedure and I gave him very specific, timely feedback in order to just allow him to break through and have a couple tiny successes. And in doing so, over the period of a few different class periods, I noticed that Mark was more willing to put himself out there and actually learn how to break through those struggles to successes on his own. And it was an incredible day when I was working with another student and I was helping them out and giving them some feedback. And from behind I heard, "Yes, I got it!" And I turn around and it's Mark. And he had broken through the biggest struggle that he had had yet. And he got to a point where he was able to play a song that we had with both hands at the same time, reading the notes and playing the keyboard. That was a day I wasn't sure we were going to see with Mark, but it was an incredible day. And it was an important day too, because it reminded me that I'm responsible for making sure that my students have a purpose for learning, that I provide them with the specific timely feedback in order to have them be able to go through the struggle. I'm also responsible for providing my students the time and the safe place to struggle. Because what that gives those students is the ability for them to be the success. So I hope that you can see a little bit of how Mark changed my teaching world. And I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for that. And I hope you can see how this can expand to other classrooms as well. I hope that other classrooms are able to take that model and institute it. So, to the youth in the audience today, just like Mark, I hope you fail, 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 and I hope you try, because eventually you will break through and you will be the one with success. To the adults in the audience today, I encourage you to see how the arts can play such a huge role in building the capacity for tenacity within our youth. I hope you encourage youth to participate in the arts, and I hope you do your part in advocating for the arts and their amazing ability to transform learning and people. Thank you.